You're watching Leafs Morning Take with host Nick Alberga and former NHLer Jay Rosehill. The show starts now.
Presented by Betano, it's time for the Thursday edition of Leafs Morning Take, and we're feeling quite jovial on this Thursday because the Maple Leafs beat the Winnipeg Jets. A shutout victory. We're going to talk about that and much more coming up. It's Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill. What's going on, Rosie?
Not much, same old, just kind of reevaluating that snooze fest that happened yesterday. I didn't see that coming, man. I knew, maybe the Winnipeg Jets would be putting on a bit of a defensive effort, but odd one, man. 0-0 overtime, not a ton of scoring chances, kind of an ugly start and some couple weird things going on for the Leafs, but the night for Sammy anyway, that's for sure.
You can't quote me on this, but I can't recall the last 1-0 game this year, at least specifically in the NHL. And if you were to ask me to wager money on the Maple Leafs being involved in that game, I would have called you crazy. But nevertheless, I mean, that is one of the sell points of the game is a Maple Leafs under hit for the first time in ever, it seems. But a very defensive-minded game, great goaltending. So looking forward to getting to that. Dave Pagnotta, the fourth period, is going to drop by in about 25 minutes or so. We're going to break down this one. He was at the game at Scotiabank Arena. We're going to talk about the trade market, Ryan Reeves, Sheldon Keefe's leash. We're going to cover everything with Dave Pagnotta. But I want to start off today's show by getting your thoughts on what transpired in Florida, in Sunrise. The Florida Panthers, the Arizona Coyotes getting together the first time since January 2nd. And the Nick Cousins boarding on Jason Zucker and the return of stage fighting, man. We got two scraps in the first, two face-offs of that game.
Yeah, that was wild. You haven't seen that in a little while, but two teams that have a bit of grit to them for sure, and some retribution was paid. Some guys weren't happy. Some guys wanted to take care of business, and they did a couple of times there off the opening draw. You don't see that all the time, but kind of like to see it still exist once in a while. It doesn't hurt my feelings at all.
Well, it's funny. 5 years ago, it's like the MO of the league was to get stage fighting out of the league. But I think it just adds, we all knew what was happening, Rosie. I watched the beginning of that game and I saw the fourth lines of both sides starting that. We knew what was happening. I think both coaches understood the assignment too, given what transpired 2 weeks ago, no?
Yes, I don't know. I don't think the coaches go put guys out there, but one guy just to kind of protect, and then, I'm not going to leave my guys hanging. So another guy, and all of a sudden you got your big fourth line out there, and the stage fighting needed to leave around that 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12 era. Even while I was in the league doing that role, I wasn't a big fan of it. I wanted it, the best ones are organic and ones that come out of out of passion and out of intensity in the corners and whatnot. But I mean, the stage fighting is gone. It's not a problem anymore. So if something needs to be taken care of or addressed, or a team feels the need to do something like that, and that's the way to go about it, I have zero problems with it. It's not like this. It's not like the big meathead, 260 pound, can hardly skate scrappers coming back in any way, shape, or form to say good luck to the guy after, before a square up. So I'm fine with it. A little bit of old school hockey never bothers me.
I know it doesn't. Is there a specific fight that comes up in your world? I know you've had plenty of them where it's it was so staged, it was silly, but you just loved it. Is there one that comes out to full memory of you?
No, well, I don't know. I mean, there's this one before Mike Rupp. I had kind of Letang whacked me in the back of the legs as I was back checking. I turned around and kind of lifted my stick up between his legs, one-handed, and he fell like I shot him, right? Just a complete rat. So the next face-off, Mike Rupp came out and he's like, you didn't spear him, did you, Rosie? And I was like, no, I did not. He fell like a pile of bricks. And he goes, I know, but we're still going to have to go. I said, that's fine. It was a TV timeout, so I'm kind of skating around waiting for that to end. And then before it came back, they had to go to another TV timeout because the ice was all buggered up and the linesmen. And I was like, oh my God, this is taking forever. And, just going through when you've already, given the signal that we're going here in a matter of moments. And then it's got to drag on and wait. It's an ugly feeling. You just want to get going and get it over with. Vic,
Yeah,
I can hear you back there rummaging like it's nobody's business. Holy moly. Building a brick house back there?
The listeners can't hear that, right? It's our producer in the background, but nevertheless, yeah, I think it's intriguing. I think when you look at that from that perspective, that you're just waiting and waiting and waiting for the scrap to happen. It just never goes down. And then you're like, I don't know. It's like, it must be a crazy mentality when you know you're about to scrap and it just, you're waiting, you know?
Yeah, it's ugly feeling, man. It's bad enough when, say, there is some retribution game going on. It's very obvious. Like, I remember getting called up. Yeah, I think I got called up one day when I was down because Carcillo was acting like a meathead. And I got called up from a road trip. We were down in Texas with the Marlies, had to get called up. So as soon as that phone call hits, everyone's texting you, oh, you and Carcillo and stuff. I'm like, I'm not sure Carcillo's gonna scrap me,
Yeah.
especially when it's so built up. And but that whole day and then that night, and then you go to pregame skate, and then afterwards you go home, you take your nap, it's on your mind, you wake up, your alarm goes off, time to put your suit on, you know it's coming, everyone's building it up, your phone's blowing up. I'm gonna make sure I watch that game. Are you gonna fight so and so? It's like, good Lord, it takes forever. I hated game day. But in that game, you get out at, for some reason, they put us out there second shift and we scored and it was a non-issue. And that's usually the case when it's
Yeah.
very, very built up. But, waiting for those scraps is never ideal. I just love playing hard, getting in the corners, banging and crashing. Some guy doesn't like it, spring load your shit and away you go. That's the best way to do it and always has been.
Well, I'm sure your teammates loved it, so it's great to hear that and great to see that. And having you as a teammate over the weekend in Jasper, I can attest to that. You blew up some guy on Seattle, the Seattle team that we played. So you set a tone out there, and I think that's why the team went on a bit of a hot streak in Jasper, that pond hockey tournament. So Dave Pagnotta is coming up in about 25 or 20 minutes or so at the Leafs Nation 401 here on YouTube, where you could subscribe if you're watching right now. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button at the Leafs Nation 401. Leafs Morning Take. Wherever you find your podcasts as well, make sure to leave us a review with a 5-star rating. That would be fantastic. Brought to you by DoorDash. It's time for the appetizer. For a limited time, our listeners can get 25% off, up to $10 in value, and 0 delivery fees in their first order of $15 or more. When you download the DoorDash app, enter code NATION25. That's code NATION25, uppercase, for 25% off your first order with DoorDash. Offer valid in Canada, subject to change. Terms apply. And I thought you put it perfectly as we were texting after the game. Very unleafy victory. That's usually what happens to the Leafs, but they found a way, didn't they?
Yeah, they did find a way. It didn't look like they wanted to, to come out that way and get those shots. I mean, we know it's a defensively sound team over there with the Jets. The numbers on them having 3 and less goals scored on them for 30. I get it. You'd think if any team would be able to crack them, it would be the firepower of the Leafs. They're offensively minded. They're offensively gifted. It's one of the things that they do have. But they just couldn't crack it. And, it wasn't a lot of scoring chances either way. It looked like both teams were tired. That's what I'm going to say. It is the dog days of January here. Both teams looked tired. Nobody had the explosive, ability to just come out and just overwhelm the other team. Both teams were kind of stuck in the same gear. That 2-on-0 we can talk about. My Lord, I've never quite seen anything like that. But at the end of the day, when the chances came around, Sammy was there to help out. I really can't even think of a good scoring chance that the Leafs had the entire game. Like, nothing major. It's not like they were getting goalied. It's not like they were getting chances like crazy and just couldn't find the back of the net. There was like nothing going on. It was a very boring game. I'm just going to say it, because both teams were kind of, like I said, stuck in the same gear.
That's fair. There's so many different avenues we can go. Maybe we go with the start first and foremost, and maybe not, because we're playing the video of the save here. So why don't we break that down first, the save, and we can intertwine that into a conversation about benching some of the big boys in the second period. Like, I think it's hilarious that in his entire tenure as a head coach of this team, like that's the moment Sheldon Keefe's like, I've had enough. It wasn't a back check from Marner and Matthews on the power play that led to that 2-on-0. And that's the moment where Keefe's like, you know what? I'm going to make a statement here. I'm going to bench these guys on the power play.
Well, something must have happened that shift to pull the certain crew off, and because obviously nobody knew who was going on to replace the defenseman. So that's what happens when there's normal expectations on who's going out. A coach will say, back it off to to make the regulars not go out there, but the new guys aren't really made aware that it's them. So I've played in like 3 leagues in 13 years of professional hockey. I've never seen a 2-on-0 breakdown like that. I mean, 3 things had to happen. You had to switch up the line so that nobody knew who was going out. Then you had to realize that nobody was able to catch the changing defenseman. No one was able to catch it quick enough for them to realize, holy shit, just someone jump over the boards. No one even was paying attention to the fact that no one was replacing the line change. And then once that was sorted out, the guy didn't bust his ass back into the defensive zone. Like 3 major things had to happen for that breakdown to go. And in the NHL of all leagues, for a 2-on-0 from the red line with that much time and space and nobody even chasing them down. It's not like a couple guys squirted by on a bobbling puck. There was nobody around. That was fucking beer league, man. I was in shock at what was going on. Had to kind of rewind and figure out what the hell happened, but it was an odd thing, and Sammy came up absolutely huge. They really botched that 2-on-0, but lucky to keep it 0-0 after that for sure. That
It
was
reminded me a lot of remember that game a couple months back where Nylander collided with, I think, John Tavares, and nobody really came back, and the opposition scored the winner in that game. Like, it reminded me a lot about that. But watching the replay, I don't even know if Keefe saw the 2 saves because he was laying into Matthews, took a bad change, and then like Marner did like one of those half turns. Like, there's a fucking 2-on-0 escape back. Like, and I like that there was some semblance of accountability. Like, he didn't go as far as to bench these guys for a 5-on-5 shift. I think he hit them more where it hurts, and that's on the power play. Like, this guy's punting away power plays in a 0-0 hockey game. Not to say that PP1's been good at all. The last 8 games, they're 1 for 20, the least power play. But I thought it was such an interesting time in the season, in his tenure, to pull that out. It just means he's a bit desperate. He knows his job could be on the line, and he's had enough of this bullshit.
Yeah, you'd think so, man. It just, to me, it seems scattery. It just seems scattery, and I wish we could watch practice, because it'd be nice to know what kind of practice he's running, what the flow state of that is, what the attitude is at practice. But it's just like, with going in with expectations and feeling like you got your stuff together, going into a game, and then 14 minutes left in the first period, we got new lines and stuff. It's like, good Lord, it just seems like he's kind of teetering on the edge and not sure what to do. It doesn't seem like he's confident in his decisions. He changes them so quickly. And then to have that happen in that game, like, you only got 2 games left in the next 2 weeks. You got to be ready. You got to have your energy levels high. You got to be prepared, and you got to empty the tank both of those games. You're playing one of the best teams in the National Hockey League, a very well-rounded club that complements each other and kind of has everything going for them, especially defensively. You think you would be going, okay, we get a break coming up here. We're professionals. We get paid a lot of money. We're in this market. We have not been doing great the last 2 weeks. We got Sammy back here trying to put some building blocks together. And then you come out with a lazy ass dick around, fucking not back checking, looping and shooting, who cares type of attitude. I'd lose my goddamn marbles. I would have lost my marbles on this group a long time ago. And it's that prima donna, like, I don't have to work hard. I can't point my finger at Austin Matthews ever with the goal pace that he's on, but the other guys you sure can. And I mean, Austin, yeah, you can get 65 goals this year, but like, you are the franchise tag on this team. Are you going to be the guy that doesn't back check? Are you going to be the guys to play lazy the last couple huge games before the playoff break? You got to be the guy leading the charge. You got to be the guy setting the tone. You got to be the guys that guys look to and say, shit, I got to be like him, it brings me to Jaromir Jagr. I went to Philadelphia right after he left, and like, that guy was like 40 years old. And, there's guys like Braden Shen out there who just, Jagr has the ice before practice on his own, where he's got his weight vest and weighted ankles on. Then he does practice. Then he stays out there for like 45 minutes after practice, just working on shit. And every one of those young guys could not get off the ice until he did. How could you justify it, right?
Yeah.
Austin Matthews being the leader of this team and that guy for years to come here, in a game like that, how do you be lazy? How do you justify being lazy? Don't you hate getting picked apart by guys like us? Don't you dislike being, the guy that says you're not good enough and you're one dimensional. Like, why wouldn't you just at least have your effort level there? And Mitch Marner goes without saying. So disappointing in that faction that during that game they did that. But I want to reiterate, they got the win. They got the W. It wasn't pretty, but they found a way to win against a very good team. So, I mean, at the end of the day, you got to hang your hat on the 2 points.
Yeah, it's incredible to me how much the narrative changes if they lose that game, even in OT, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's inexplicable to me, Rosie, watching the first half of that hockey game, and they're going to use, and maybe it's not even them. People are going to be like the dreaded first game back from the 4-game Western road trip. Like, dude, Winnipeg was ready to play that hockey game. Like, it was burn the saddle. Let's play Winnipeg Jets hockey. And the Leafs were playing like it was a fucking vacation in Cancun, man. Like, I was this close. I was this close to calling the police department here in Toronto and reporting a heist. Like, Willie Nylander is playing like a $6 million player. Like, what has happened? I know it's a small sample size, 2 weeks, but this guy 3 weeks ago was controlling a hockey game. He gets paid, and all of a sudden he's resorted back to the same bullshit that Leafs fans have gone crazy about in the past. Like, he has glimpses where it's like, oh my goodness. He also has had way more lapses in the last 3 weeks than he had the entirety of the beginning 35 games of the season. It's scary to me, man. It is scary to me that you just committed that much money to this guy.
Well, I mean, people don't like Leafs fans because they become negative. Nothing's ever good enough. They flip flop. One day we're building statues. The next day we want to tear it down to the studs. I get that, but I'm sorry. That's what this team gives you. That's why it is. Like, we have such highs where we look like if we play like that every night, we can't be beaten. And then we have such lows where it's like, does anyone have pride? Who's in control of this thing? Is there any accountability in there? What's the guys' commitment level to this team? That was embarrassing. And you look at William Nylander, and the way he just took off this year was a stud, a force to be reckoned with every single night. His consistency was incredible. Gets paid. And I'm sorry, but are we not supposed to talk about that? Are we not supposed? Is it just a coincidence that he just whammo? And how many games has it been since he signed there? It's been enough to make a comment about it. He has gone MIA the second the pen touched paper. And there's crazy. A game last night where he could have taken control. Yeah. He could have been the force. He could have been the leader. He could have swung the momentum in there and got everyone behind him and rolling those lines properly. He hasn't shown me even a flash of what he had the first 35 games. And it just so happens to fall on the day that he puts pen to paper. The very next game, he was a ghost and has been so since. And we're not supposed to talk about that because the one glaring thing about signing that contract, which I think everyone agreed, you have to sign him. You can't lose him. Mm-hmm. He's proven. Like, what do you let the guy go that gives you that? You can't. The only thing we were worried about was he's got a bit of a habit of kind of, getting a little lazy when he doesn't need to be, and he can get a chip on his shoulder and have an FU in his game and just light the tits off the league like he did. But he's also capable of being lackadaisical out there. And I'm sorry to say, maybe it's a huge coincidence, but all we can do is talk about what's happening. And he's been a ghost since he signed that contract, which is just mind blowing.
Yeah, I love you because you're real, man. It's truth. And I know Giovanni in the chat right now is saying, relax, Nick, but the sample size is big enough where it's like, man, like, how do you go from that to this where you're inconsistent? You're so bang on. A game like that, this is why we pay you 11.5 sheets per season, or we're about to. It's because you're a game breaker. You take over hockey games. Like, go watch Nathan McKinnon, dude. That guy's on a different planet right now where every night it's like 3 points, 4 points, 4 goals. Like, and I understand maybe it's an anomaly of a season. Like, he's going to win his Hart Trophy this season, but still, you have to notice guys like that. When you're paying these guys that much money, especially and specifically in games like that, you have to notice them. And I just haven't really noticed Nylander much since he signed that extension. Maybe it's a sheer coincidence. Obviously, I will give him the benefit of the doubt. There's a lot of pressure now to perform after signing said contract, but I'm just calling it how it is. And I think it's fair to say that, Rosie. I really do. I'm trying to be my best. I think we play both sides, but it's fair to call it out right now.
Yeah, I'm not going back on the signing. I think you got to do it. It's what needs to be done. And, he proved that he, with his play that he commanded that and put them in a position where they had to pay him. That's fantastic. But we do a show on the Maple Leafs every single day. Are you seriously going to say that we're not going to touch that? Well, let's just not touch that. Let's not bring up the fact that immediately. What is it? What has it been, like 7 games or 6 games or whatever since he signed that thing around that era? Not
Yeah.
one time has he been a standout. Not one time has he been the dominant guy on the score sheet, where almost every single game before that he was. Are you telling me we can't talk about that? I'm sorry. I'm not doing my job if I'm not saying, how about this? This is kind of a little bit of a, you know, a shot of exactly what we didn't want to happen. The one worry we had, not saying it's come true, but anytime here, Willie, you want to do what you were doing before you signed that contract would be awesome, but not happening right now. So maybe that turns around. But the one thing I will say is that was a game where, oftentimes the Leafs would, say outchance a guy or outshoot them, a team, and then just get into, oh shit, you do what? A goal gets called back or something rather, or you can't get the power plays that night, and you go into overtime and you just lose it on kind of a weird one, like just devastating. They got the 2 points. They found out the 2 points. This was a team where we thought we were going to have our best. We won without our best. And while it's not the way you would draw it up, it's not what we think this team's going to go forward with and have success with, but they did not have their best, and they got 2 points against a very good hockey team, proven good hockey team. So on the positive side of things, you can say that, hey, found a way to win. It wasn't a game that you'd traditionally want to be in or expect this team to be in, but they got 2 points without their best. I mean, you can't argue that fact either. And I think that's why, it's nice to have a different look at a show today, because usually it's the same old bullshit, and that was just an off the grid game, which we'll take the 2 points, no question.
Let's not bury the lead either. The big story, Ilya Samsonov. It's incredible to me. Again, we're talking about a guy on January 1st was put on waivers, and he was pretty much out of sight, out of mind. And now, like 3 weeks later, whatever it is, he's the talk of the town. They're chanting his name. It's so Toronto, but this guy deserves his flowers. I love the post game last night. It's the ultimate story of perseverance. The sample size now, 3 starts since coming back, 2-1-0, 1.31, 944, 1 shutout. But dude, he was unbelievable in that game, specifically in the first period, where it was a complete no-show from the home side. He's the only reason why they won that game last night.
Yeah, the score would have been different, and Leafs had no offense, no power play to speak of, and holy smokes, did they get the chances, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they're getting all the calls, and you'd think that the Jets were going to get a peeper there. They were due for one. It was going to go the other way, and they get another one. The Leafs, could not capitalize on anything. Kind of, a bit alarming when that's supposed to be your bread and butter. When you got $60 million on the first unit power play, you'd think that you'd be working it around, having chances out your ass. They had nothing going. And when you look at it close, the effort level wasn't there, hence being benched on the power play, these stars. So that's frustrating to see without question. But Sammy absolutely bailed them out. That's the 3rd start in a row that this guy has had a game that you can rely on, a game that makes you feel comfortable and safe. And from where that guy was at the beginning of the season, I don't know what's going on with this guy. He's a first rounder, potential out the ass, couldn't quite find it in Washington. We signed him last year. Everyone's thinking, why are we taking other teams' reclamation projects? He looks fantastic. I mean, him and Murray were switch hitting it last year. Like, who do we play? Then if one guy had a little bit of a hiccup time, the other guy was out his ass. They switched hit fantastically. He kind of comes in, has a bit of a sophomore slump this season. Why did he start like that? I don't know. His head wasn't in. His confidence was shattered. You give him some time off, some extra work. He says the right things, goes out there again, gets shelled, doesn't have it, to the point where you can't put him in the crease. Put him down to the Marlies, where he doesn't even play or practice, really. It was just like a mental retreat, a reset, something of that nature. And it fucking works. He comes back. We put him in after finally the guy, the 3rd stringer that we were lucky to have, holds us in games and gets us some points and keeps us in it, starts to feel a little bit of the effects of the run and starts to, maybe ease off a bit. Okay, we're going to Sammy. This is basically make or break Sammy. If he has the same type of game that he's had all year and he doesn't have it and he's got no confidence and, he lets in some stinkers and he loses the game, that's it for that guy in the Maple Leaf uniform, man. I mean, that's it for him. And holy shit, he did he did exactly what you could have possibly hoped for. He has stood on his head for 3 straight games, most recently a shutout in a game where the guys in front of him aren't doing screw all. So fantastic to see him back. I really like Sammy. I think he can be a fantastic goaltender. The consistency is the only thing he needs to really work on. I like his interviews. I like his attitude. I think he's fantastic, man. I'm a big Sammy fan, and to see him this resurgence, it's as good as you could possibly have asked for.
To me, it's good news all around from all perspectives. Number one, the trade deadline's approaching on March 8th. They're going to have a conversation to be had. They have 3 goalies and 2 roster positions. Unless you want to hold 3 goalies on a roster, it makes no sense in my world. And number two, they're winning games with them, right? So I think it's a win-win. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked at all if I'd continue buttering up Samsonov, and hopefully he continues to play well, and he's a trade candidate, and you can free up some cap. Like, we all know the conversations to be had if they do end up buying at the trade deadline 17 games before March 8th is like, how do you create cap space? Well, there's an option right there. It's positive news. Like, that's all I can draw. There's nothing negative I can draw from this story. And his mental health is obviously a big story too. It's great to see him back in the right place. He's not flying around in there. It just, to me, it makes no sense how 3 weeks ago, this guy looked like a Timbits goalie. Now all of a sudden he can stop a puck again. Like, it's insane to me.
Well, it's that position, man.
Yeah.
It's so volatile, and I mean, I've never played it before, but there's certain things out there that you can just lose. Like golf is one of them. I mean, the best golfer in the world can go out there and shoot 64 one day and then can shoot 74 the next day. Like, how does that happen? It's just the way it is. Like, sometimes it's just not there and you can't force it. Things just aren't working. And I think I akin that a lot to the goaltending position too. Sometimes just from what you can see, and I've had a 100 goalies that have been on my team who I watch every single day. And, the spotlight's always on them because they're the only one in that position through games. And there's only one at each end in practices. And you see them every single day, and you know what they're like, and you can see their attitude and their confidence rise and fall. And when that leaves you, man, that is a difficult position. I mean, when nothing's going right and you can't find it and you lose your confidence, the fucking pucks just fill the net, and it gets worse and worse. And it seems like the harder these guys try, the worse it gets. And then on the other side of that coin, sometimes when they are hot, they are so hot. Like, they're always in position. It's effortless. The puck's always hitting them. They have this confidence where it's just like, how is the puck going to do anything but hit me? I'm everywhere, and they just shine. So it's an odd position, man, but it's not unique to Sammy. These things happen, and to go up
True.
and down like that, certainly we break it down and dissect it every day, but it's not new. It is a big difference from his bad to his good, but that is what happens out there. And all you can do is hope that he's found it. This confidence is real, and it's going to keep going. And he's going to have a hiccup here if he continues to play where he doesn't steal the game. It's not like this is magic, and it's about not making a huge deal when that does happen, keeping your confidence and realizing the position, and not being able to go back down that road again where he was, and staying out of there. So that's the next test for Sammy, is when things aren't going perfectly, which is going to happen sooner than later, how he responds to that.
Anyway, slice it. Very positive, fantastic story that they got some saves from their goaltender Ilya Samsonov. Nick Robertson, I thought was great last night again. Sheldon Keefe obviously loved him. He logged a career high 17:08, sets up the winner from Austin Matthews, 4 shots on goal. And we talked about this going into the game, especially without Tyler Bertuzzi not in the lineup. Those guys on the left side, like Nyes and company, and Robertson specifically, and Holmberg too, had to step up. And I thought Robertson had a great game. And I commend Sheldon Keefe for rewarding him, right? He played a lot in the third period, and he got some shifts in OT, and obviously leads to the winner here.
Yeah, for sure. He looked solid. He was kind of everywhere. I like his work ethic. I mean, a young guy that's trying to prove himself and trying to say, no. Remember that blue chip prospect you always thought I was? I am that guy. His opportunities, maybe if you talk to him, he's probably going to say he hasn't got the opportunities that he's looking for up and down in the minors, playing, not playing, scratched a whole bunch. Who's he playing with? I'm sure he'd have something to say about that. But on a night where those big boys aren't going, like, where's Willie? Where's Johnny? I mean, Austin stood out a little bit. Marner, no. Like, a couple lazy shifts too, enough to piss Keefe off real bad to make a statement. And So there you are with Nick Robertson. Here's your minutes. Here's your ice time. Here's your opportunity. And he worked his nuts off. I saw him all over the place. And that last shift in overtime, I mean, he's right in the spot for Matthews to feed him. He would have banged that home, I think. Huge overtime winner. Huge night for Nick Robertson. Catches the skate of a guy. He stays on it. Gets it back to Matthews, almost gets another chance, and just, I don't know if he stiffened up his hands there, or just it was a little ahead of him. Shit, I lost it, but manages to get the puck back. Then the poise he had along the half wall to, that's tough in overtime. Those two on O's can happen anytime, and he bounced it off the boards, gains possession, gets it to the right guy, gets the hell off, makes a really smart professional play for a young player that was unselfish, smart, and well thought out, and took a lot of skill and composure to do it, and gets in on the winner, man. He stood out for sure. And if this guy's confidence starts getting high and he starts getting some trust of the coach, this guy could make a difference on the lineup, and he's showing that right now.
The pro Robertson crowd on social media had a full aubergine erect last night. Like, they were fired up. It was boner alert on Twitter last night for Robertson. I get it, man. Like, if you can get production from that guy, especially a salary cap team, that's a bonus, isn't it?
100%. That's what you're looking for. You want to go deep in the playoffs, man. Look at every team that wins the Stanley Cup. They have guys on entry-level deals stand up big time. They have depth guys that stand up big time, and you are not going to win a Stanley Cup with Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews being really fancy and really high-octane offense. That's not going to win you a Stanley Cup. That could certainly help you win the Game 7s and get you on the board early and all those things, but shit, you got to have a deep roster with lots of guys doing lots of different things, and a guy like Nick Robertson standing up and showing that he's a stud on an entry-level deal is a big thing that these guys need for sure.
Meantime, the following interview is brought to you by our friends over at Battlegrounds Axe Throwing. Unlock the ultimate birthday party, team building event, or have a great date night with your significant other. To find a location and book an outing today, go to battlegrounds.com. That's BATL grounds.com. As you bring in the one and only for the fourth period in SiriusXM NHL Network Radio, it's NHL Insider David Pagnotta. What's going on, Dave? Oh, we do not hear Dave, so we're going to try to connect one more time here with Dave and get his audio in sorts here. But looking forward to discussing, obviously, Sheldon Keefe and all that, and his utilization, his deployment of some of these players on the roster. But yeah, Nick Robertson's a name that certainly came to the forefront last night, and you need those type of games, right, Rosie?
Yeah, I mean, it's just such an odd game. I think I tweeted something like a very unleafy game or something like that. But I mean, it's nice that we're used to seeing this the wins are the same, the losses are the same. It gets to be a bit of a merry-go-round following this team. And that was a game that was straight out of outer space. Like, I didn't see that coming. Was in shock the whole time. The 0-0, and you look at the amount of times that this team has scored goals. I think it's like 193 games with a goal, where the next closest at Colorado is like 80 or something. And then the next one's like 30 in a row. Like, this team is heads and shoulders above anyone in the league. I don't know what the actual record is, but they got to be closing up on it, because they just never have a game like that where no one scored. And I mean, talk about a snooze fest from like the 2000s where it's 0-0 overtime. Like, come on, someone score a goddamn goal. But, again, I got to hang my hat on the fact that they didn't have their best stuff and got 2 points against a huge team. If you would have talked about that on Monday and said, what's coming up down the barrel here on Wednesday, big game, I think you would have taken that. It's a 0-0 overtime win. You think, well, Sammy must be playing good. They must be playing good defense or whatever it is, but they got the 2 points. That's what's important.
It is, and looking forward to what transpires, of course, on Saturday. I think we're good to go with today's guest, Dave Pagnotta. Dave, can you hear us?
Yep, I got you. Sorry, boys.
Hey, technology. Let's go, baby. Thank you so much for doing this. How close is Sheldon Keefe to a nervous breakdown, in your opinion?
In my opinion or your opinion? Your opinion might be a little different.
DEFCON 9 for me, buddy.
Yeah. Look, they something. I mean, at some point, eventually, we'll have to give. And nice to get the win last night. And listening to you guys a little bit earlier with respect to skill versus the physicality tied to the game. I mean, there's only so much you can do with the assets you're provided. I think he's, a good coach. I just don't think the recipe that he's working with, the ingredients that he's working with, is going to look. First of all, it's going to raise some questions and some eyebrows. But I just don't think that the pieces that he's been dealt and the cards that he's been dealt, if you put those all together, it makes for some questionable hockey every once in a while, given the status that the team is at.
Yeah, what do you think the answer is? I mean, we're sitting here every day breaking it down. Obviously, this is a very heavy top end team with some defensive problems. They've gone through their goaltending problems. If it's more of the same the rest of the year, what do you call this team? What do you want them to do at the deadline? Can they get it done in the playoffs? Like, what is your thought process on where they're at right now, and what are they going to do in the future?
They're a nice team, and that's kind of how I would categorize them. Look, there's no denying the skill set that they've got, but it's the other intangibles that have to come into play that we all know, and you guys just talked about. Those are what win you championships. So, it comes from up top, frankly. And Tree hasn't had that much of a window since coming in there. He's not going to tear things down right out of the gate. He's got to assess what he has, and he's been looking, he's been calling, he's been making inquiries and seeing what's out there, both on the defensive side of things and also in kind of the mid to bottom six. But speaking to people around the league, it hasn't sounded like the Leafs are overly eager to make a move right now, and aren't willing to give up the pieces necessary to get a Chris Tanev, for example. What that means to me is that he's continuing, and management is continuing to kind of sit back, assess what they've got, and kind of figure out if now is the time to go all in. And whether it's posturing and it's a negotiation tactic by Treliving and the staff right now, still a little bit early to tell. But based on the conversations around the league, I don't get the sense that they feel, at least up top, that this is their year. They're not a player or two away from, chasing a Stanley Cup legitimately. There are a few other cosmetic changes that are going to need to happen. And it doesn't sound like they're there yet. So for me, this is a nice team. They're a good regular season team. But you need those intangibles come playoff time that every team and every championship team over the last however umpteen number of years has had.
So I'm conflicted on this, guys, because I think the easy rebuttal is like the Florida Panthers. They were dog shit for 70 games last year. All of a sudden, they find their groove and they go all the way to the Stanley Cup final. Like, why can't the Leafs do that? And that's why I'm conflicted. Why can't a switch just flip with 15 games left and then go on a crazy run? Like, why can't they?
They don't have a Matthew Tkachuk, a Sam Bennett, Carter Verhaeghe. Radko Gudas was part of that group, so on and so on. Again, intangible pieces. Like those balls to the wall, I'm going to do whatever the hell it takes. I'm going to run you over like a Mack truck caliber player that fits your top six and that complements your top six. They don't have that. And that's not the end all and be all. You have to have that blend. They have some of those pieces. They don't have the other pieces, not yet. And I think that the thought process was Tyler Bertuzzi was going to be one of those pieces, that Max Domi was going to be one of those pieces. And they've had good spurts throughout the season, but I don't think the physicality is there. And to me, honestly, guys, I wonder if that comes from the system, the structure, the coaching staff. Maybe they don't want that type of system in place. I don't know. I'm not specifically sure on that. They have some of the pieces to do it, but I haven't seen much in terms of what those intangible pieces that guys like Bertuzzi and Domi bring. And you brought in Ryan Reeves for a reason. They don't want to play him.
Well, I was going to say, you took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say, if you go back to the summertime, we knew what the holes were and what we were trying to fill. And you go out there and we get Bertuzzi, we get Domi. And it's like, people blame Treliving right now. It's like he went and did what he was asked. He put names on paper that are quality names. And then they come here and they do absolutely nothing. So he doesn't have a crystal ball. How do you predict that Tyler Bertuzzi is going to be a ghost? He's not talking. He doesn't have any confidence. He's not chirping off. He's not a rat. He's not in the fight. He's just kind of there with a blank look on his face every single night. I'm like, where is the flair in this guy? I thought that he's like one of these young guys that's coming up and being this dominant style of play, and it's just been non-existent. So how do you put that on tree living? It's in the locker room, if you ask me.
Yeah, absolutely. Like these guys came in with, you needed those types of players that have that fire under your ass kind of mentality from the drop of the puck till the final whistle. And you're right. We haven't seen that so far this season, not consistently. There've been some spurts here and there, but on a game-to-game basis, it hasn't been there. So for me, yeah, you can't predict that. That's not a tree issue. That's not Shanahan. That's not the rest of the management group. That comes down to in the room and not exclusively to the guys on the ice. I've got to think that, again, part of the coaching system that they have in place factors into how they're performing. To me, it's not, you don't just lose that overnight. You don't just go, okay, well, now I'm a part of the Leafs, so I guess I don't have to play this way. They signed you to bring that with you on a game-to-game basis, and it hasn't happened. So yeah, it's in the room, it's from the bench, and it's the same story over and over again that we've had the last umpteen seasons, several seasons now, consecutively for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Where's that fire?
It always leads back to the same conversation about the same guys they want to continue to pay. Nylander got his money and he took a vacation now. Like we talked about this earlier, a different player in the last 2.5 weeks. Maybe just a sheer coincidence. Want to get your perspective on what happens next. Obviously, not to look too far ahead. John Tavares is struggling right now, but Mitch Marner is like the next big conversation we're going to have. And that started percolating like a month and a half ago. Where do you think that direction goes?
They'll start those. I'm sure they've had loose conversations to this point. They'll start to speed those up over the off season whenever the season comes to an end. He can't, just like Tavares and anybody else with one more year left on their contract, they can't officially sign until July 1 an extension. But I think you learn from what you saw and what happened with Willie. He banked on himself. He cashed in, and I think he's going to continue. Like he hasn't just given up. He's out there. He's trying. Maybe he's a little snake bitten, and maybe he has taken his foot a little bit off the gas. But I think they've recognized that going into next season without an extension in place for at least number 16, I don't think they can do that. So I'm anticipating that those conversations to get heated once the summer rolls around, probably before July, and then see where it kind of goes from there. But it's going to be a big number. It's going to be bigger than Willie's, and that's just the nature of the beast. He's on pace for another 90-point season. That would be either hitting 90 or being on pace for it because of the shortened season for 6 consecutive seasons. It's hard to argue against the number, especially with the cap going up. But again, it'll be a big number. He's going to want more than Nylander, and the Leafs, I think, already understand that.
Do you think that this? Do you think that the Leafs, and you could say Dubas, has put them in a position contract-wise with, the guys they draft, who they bring in, what they give them after their entry-level contracts, and it just seems like we're pigeonholed right now to a whole bunch of high-end talent that's exactly the same. And it's not exactly the only thing you need to win a Stanley Cup. Yet you can't really get rid of these guys. You even if you wanted to, the no move clauses and stuff are going to put the ball in their court. Like, do you see this team being kind of handcuffed in a way when it comes to free agency and the changes that maybe need to be made in order to get to a Stanley Cup run?
Look, yes and no, Rosie. I think. Look, first of all, the Leafs are just kind of a little ahead of the trend where we're going to see 4 or 5 guys on a team making 8 figures. That's gonna continue. That's gonna climb. There are going to be more teams that are going to be in that boat. Some teams are a little more fortunate because, let's say, some clubs in the U.S. have no state tax. So teams like Florida, kind of, Tampa, they take advantage of it, and as they should. It's the loophole, and good for you. It is what it is. But from Toronto's perspective, look, going into the summer, they've got a decent amount of cap space to kind of play with, even with Nylander's contract kicking in next season. The cap is going to go up 5%. It's anticipated and projected to go up another 5% the year after that. So when guys like Marner and Tavares, when their next deals kick in, the cap is projected to be around $92 million. So you're going to have some cap flexibility to make additions and make moves, including this offseason. But those guys that we're talking about that bring, like, there's no Matthew Tkachuk that's going to be available in the summer. Not as an unrestricted free agent. So to go after a top tier guy and have to give him, 10 plus, that brings that physicality to it, that is that power forward with offense. Off the top of my head, I don't think there are guys that are readily available as free agents going into the summer that bring all of those elements. So you have to look at the other pieces. So to pay these 4 guys that much up front, I still think there's enough in the tank and in the bank for them to make the right pieces. I don't have the full free agent list in front of me right now, but there are going to be some players that are available that bring that gritty element to it that can contribute as part of a top 6. So I don't think they're fully handcuffed, but I mean, with relatively limited cap space in terms of the overall spectrum, it does make some decisions a little more challenging than others because you've got to allocate that money to 1 or 2 guys versus, let's say, 4 or 5.
Yeah, spoiler alert, there's not much out there in terms of free agency, but I just wanted to ask you, like, leading up to the deadline, there's still 17 games remaining for the Leafs. As you talked about earlier, it makes the most sense to take a wait-and-see approach with this team, but are there some players you've identified that could make a lot of sense? I know Tanev's name's been out there for a couple months. Is there anybody else who you think could make sense for this team?
I think there's interest in Sean Walker in Philadelphia. Lyubushkin again out in Anaheim. Walker's an interesting one. I know they've had conversations. I know they spoke about both Walker and Nick Seeler. I think there was an offer that was presented that was rejected. I think there was an offer on the table for Chris Tanev, and I know Calgary rejected that one too. So it's not that, like, the Leafs have certainly identified pieces that they want to go after, and they're also looking up front. They're also, as I mentioned earlier, mid-6. Mid to bottom 6 is another area that they want to improve upon. But you've got to be economically sound to do it. They don't have a ton of cap space. They don't have much cap space at all. So anything impactful and significant is going to not only require most likely retention, like in Tanev's situation, that Calgary would effectively have to eat half that deal. But they're also going to have to take back money, or you get a third party involved and you got to pay extra. And I don't get the sense that the Leafs are in that position right now or have that type of appetite right now to give up too much. They don't have a second round pick. Assets are limited. Teams that like some of their young players, like Minton, for example, they don't want to part with. And you're not giving that up for a rental either, especially under the circumstances in which you're playing right now. So the Leafs are looking, but I think this is a due diligence type of process. Collect all the info. All right, here's a little offer. Let's see if you'll accept it. I don't think they're serious yet.
It's fair enough, but I still think it's the definition of insanity. Like, they had the perfect trade chip at the deadline. His name was Willie Nylander, and they're just going about this the wrong way, in my opinion. You just continue to do the same shit year after year after year, and that's why you continue to fail. But nevertheless, we'll continue this conversation next time we speak. Thanks so much for this, Dave.
You got it. Thanks, boys.
Thanks, Dave.
Dave Pagnotta, the fourth period in SiriusXM NHL Network Radio. It's always fascinating to get outside perspective. You and I, Rosie, do a show on a daily basis, and I can't commit to, like, paying those guys. And they're gonna do it, but there's so many flaws on this roster. It's like, why wouldn't you want to allocate some of that money if it's a JT, if it's a Marner now? And it just doesn't get the feel they're gonna do that. I feel like they're gonna fucking be like, hey, Mitch Marner, you won 12.5. Here's 12.5 on an 8-year deal, and we're going to try to win with you. Like, is it not insanity to you too?
Well, I know, but put yourself in Treliving's position where he's making phone calls, getting a sense of what's out there. And if you don't get, like, to put that together takes, it's not like he has 4 different options on things to do with William Nylander. He might have like 1.5. Sign him, or maybe this team's kicking the tires and could maybe take him off your hands, but what is your return, and what would be the response in Toronto to making this move? And all of a sudden, you're known. That is a label making move for Treliving to say, you got rid of William Nylander when he was hotter than a friggin' pistol. He had just hit his stride. He showed you. He said he wants to be here. He put up X number of points in X number of games, and you traded him for what? That's a very likely scenario, because it's not like you can just go out there and be like, oh, well, there's this Nathan McKinnon type player right here that a team's willing to deal for William. Like, no, man, you're only able to do what is on the table. And I just don't think that he could, work the phones enough to find a deal that makes sense, where it's like, yes, we use this blue chip player in William Nylander who's playing well. We moved him out to someone who gave us the world in return, everything we needed, everything we asked for, and made our team well-rounded. We had a stud leader, power forward, and a real stud stay-at-home, rugged defenseman for William Nylander. Like, who's going to give you that? That's what you would have made a deal for, and I would have been all for it. But it has to be on the table, and I just don't think that stuff's on the table these days, and hence why you only have one option to sign them. And they've got themselves in this position where you have these $10+ million guys who are all the same type of player, who all can put up wicked points, but you keep running into the same problems of having a really lopsided team, and you can't really fix your problems because you pay all those guys the same amount of money. And when it's a game where your big skill and flashy offense isn't going to be there, holy smokes, do you look like garbage. And people are you lose ugly games, and people are pissed off, and guys like us are saying this is fucking unacceptable. And then you're going to have your games where all those guys are firing all cylinders and it's a highlight show. And it's more of the same. And because you're painted yourself into that corner, I don't see an easy way out of it. I would love to move Mitch Marner and his prowess and his reputation and his ability to someone who really needs that. But, it would have to be one of these blockbuster 3-team deals where some picks and prospects are moving around and some retained salary cap, and a type of deal where you look at it and you go, I can't even keep track of how this all works. But the big boy that went away, you got everything you desperately needed in return. And that's the only way I see this team getting out of, this one-dimensional funk that they have been in for years and years, where it's just not a team built for the playoffs, and they consistently don't get it done in the playoffs for that reason. And people get mad at that, but it's a reality, man. This team's not a playoff powerhouse. They're just not.
It's like they're chasing their tail, and that's why the frustration today. I just watch games like the Winnipeg one. I know they won. I'm trying to stay positive. I'm very positive at times, but sometimes I watch that and I'm like, they're nowhere close to the objective, and that's to win a Stanley Cup. The Betano wrap-up is presented by Betano.ca. The game starts now, 19+. Please play responsibly. I like the Islanders to beat the Montreal Canadiens tonight at the Bell Center. Patrick Waugh now with the Isles making another return there. So I think they take care of business. And I'll throw this out there just for you. I like the Johnny Gaudreau shot prop. Columbus visiting the Calgary Flames tonight. He has 2 assists in 3 games so far against Calgary. I think he's going to be horny to score tonight.
Yeah, why not? Those little storylines tend to pan out a lot. You think he'd be buzzing. I'm sure he will he'll be very well aware of the situation. He'll want to stick it up the Flames' ass as much as humanly possible. So I'm sure he will put the hammer down, shooting all kinds of rubber at the net. The shot prop, I wonder if it's juiced or not, but it's a good idea to go to. I like it. And Patty Waugh coming back to the Bell Center, you said? Oh, baby. Yeah. That'll be fun, man. Lots of history in that city, obviously.
We were in Jasper when that went down over the weekend. I'm still stunned that Patty Waugh is now the head coach of the New York Islanders. But you're not going to be here tomorrow. You're not going to be here on Monday. We get closer and closer to the All-Star break and a lot of festivities for our family, the Nation Network family, Leafs Morning Take as well. And we're going to do some stuff, some live shows as well. So stay tuned for the latest on that. But just what's your breakdown? What are you looking forward to over the weekend? Because next we speak will be on Tuesday. So there'll be another game, and then they'll be on their bye week / All-Star break.
Yeah, interesting, man. I mean, I want them right now to be analyzing last night. And I mean, if you can play like that and pull off the W, I mean, if you can get a 2-game sweep against the Winnipeg Jets going into the All-Star break, I mean, what more could you ask for? I hope they're in major preparation mode for Saturday night. Find a way to beat this team. I don't think it's going to be easy. I think they're going to be, going back to their barn. They're going to be excited. They're going to be mad they didn't win that game. They probably thought they deserved it. and they're going to be a very hard test for the Maple Leafs. And, you know, when you go into a big break, it is such a different attitude to do it after a big win than it is to do it after a disappointing loss. So that's what I'm looking forward to this week. Get that W on Saturday, and then you can kind of have a little reset, focus on the All-Star game, have some fun. Some guys will take off to the Bahamas and be with their wives and children, and it'll be a great little reset for everybody. But it's nice to do it going in with a W.
It's very Leafy. Like, again, you can't lose sight of the fact that it was Laurent Brossoit who played for Winnipeg and almost shut them out. And I wouldn't be stunned at all if the Leafs come out against the Vezina favorite right now and Connor Hellebuck on Saturday, lay 4 or 5 on this guy. You just wouldn't. I mean, that's been the story with this team against the lower tier goalies. We'll call them. They're not as good as when they are against the best goalies in the planet. They've lit up the good goalies. I mean, that's not the issue with this team, but nonetheless, looking forward to seeing what happens over the weekend in Winnipeg. Rosie, thanks for this. We'll talk on Tuesday, buddy.
You bet. Good weekend. Go Leafs. Go. Big win. We are positive. Don't worry about that, everybody. We're happy with the W. Let's get another one.
It's okay. We cover things from all avenues. I should mention as well, Matt Larkin of Daily Faceoff will fill in as my co-host tomorrow, so make sure you tune us at 11 a.m. Eastern time. Everybody in the chat, you guys are fantastic, giving different perspectives. I've been reading quite a bit on what you guys are saying, and you hit the nail on the head for the most part. At the Leafs Nation 401 on YouTube, where you can subscribe, Leafs Morning Take, wherever you find your podcast as well. Thank you to producer Vic, and thank you to our guests today, and Dave Pagnotta, the fourth period in SiriusXM NHL Network Radio. That's Jay Rosehill. I'm Nick Alberga. Talk tomorrow. Take care. Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews. We got clips. We got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.